If you've ever walked into the woods at night, you know the feeling. That sudden, instinctive awareness that something is watching you. Not an animal, not a person, something older, something patient. Most people ignore that feeling. I didn't. And because of that, I saw what lives between the trees when the forest decides to look back. I never believed in forest legends. Not until the night I camped alone in Blackwater Pines. The locals always warned me about that place. Every time I mentioned I want to hike it, someone would say the same thing in a hushed, uneasy tone. Don't go there alone. And if you see lights between the trees, don't follow them. Don't even look at them. I always assumed they were talking about some campfire story meant to keep kids from wandering off. I'm 31. I've hiked solo for years. I've camped in storms, deserts, deep woods. Nothing had ever scared me. But Blackwater Pines was different. I felt it before I even stepped onto the trail. The air had a weight to it, a thickness that didn't feel like humidity or heat. It felt like eyes, watching, pressing, waiting. I brushed it off, tightened my pack, and started the climb toward the ridge where I planned to camp overnight. If I had known what was waiting for me, I would have run back to my truck and never looked over my shoulder again. Most forests are noisy, birds, crickets, wind, something. Blackwater Pines had none of that. It was the type of silence that makes your ears ring. I didn't see another hiker the entire day. Didn't hear any animals. Not even a mosquito buzzed past my ear. Just that strange, unnatural quiet. Around sunset, I reached the ridge. It wasn't a big clearing, just a small pocket between the pines where the ground dipped and formed a flat patch of soft dirt. I set up my tent, collected firewood, and tried to settle in. The sun dipped below the trees. The temperature dropped sharply, and the silence somehow grew deeper. It felt like the forest was holding its breath. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was imagining things. Cooked some food, sat by the fire, but the longer I stayed still, the more the hairs on my arms stood up. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. That's when I saw the first light. It flickered between the trees, maybe 50 yards away. A faint bluish glow, drifting slowly from left to right. At first I thought it was a hiker with a lantern, but the way it moved wasn't natural. It floated, smooth, silent, almost weightless. I stood up, squinting through the trees. The light paused, held still, and then it expanded, just slightly, like someone had turned up a dimmer switch. Then another light appeared, and another. 3 of them now, drifting between the pines. I felt a cold pulse in my chest. My brain whispered, fireflies? Maybe? But no. Fireflies don't glow cold blue. Fireflies don't hover in perfect, motionless patterns. Fireflies don't move as if they're looking at you. Then the lights blinked, once, all at the same time. That was the first moment I felt true fear. They drifted closer, slowly, like they were curious. My instinct screamed, get inside the tent. Hide. I took a step back, then another, and each time my foot touched the ground, the lights pulsed, glowing brighter for just a fraction of a second. I realized they were reacting to me. Okay, I whispered, trying to stay calm. You're just tired. You're seeing things. Don't panic. But I wasn't hallucinating. The lights reached the edge of the clearing and stopped. They hovered there, swaying gently, almost hypnotically. I felt something in the back of my skull, an odd buzzing like static in my nerves. I blinked hard, fighting to stay focused. That's when I noticed something truly horrifying. The lights weren't floating randomly. They were spaced evenly, aligned, shaped, as if they belonged to something tall, standing behind the trees. Something with 3 glowing points on its body. Something watching me without moving an inch. My fire sputtered. The glow dimmed, and the lights drifted forward again. I backed toward my tent, careful, slow. The lights followed, drifting in perfect unison. And then I heard something. A whisper. Except it wasn't really a whisper. It didn't come from the air. It came from somewhere inside me. A faint thread of sound woven directly into my nerves. You see us. I froze. My throat closed. My mind screamed, but my body refused to move. The lights brightened, pulsing gently. You hear us. My knees buckled slightly. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream. But the whisper pinned me in place like invisible hands on my shoulders. The lights drifted closer still. We see you. For a moment, the blue lights grew so bright they cast faint shadows. My breath caught in my throat when I saw the shape behind them. A face, long, thin, hollow. The lights weren't floating, they were eyes. 3 of them, arranged in a perfect triangle on a narrow, elongated head. The creature stepped closer. Its body was impossibly tall, its limbs stretched like shadows, its skin reflecting the faint blue glow from its own eyes. It tilted its head at me, not side to side, but backward, bending so far the outline of its face pointed at the sky. I stumbled backward and fell onto my hands. That broke whatever trance I was in. The whisper stopped, the lights dimmed, and for the first time, the creature moved fast. It lunged. Not physically, the lights lunged. 3 blinding streaks of blue shot toward me like lightning. I screamed, scrambled backward, and dove into my tent. I zipped the tent shut with shaking hands. Not that it mattered. A thin layer of fabric wasn't going to stop whatever that thing was. My heart slammed against my ribs as I heard the crunch of leaves outside. Slow, deliberate. The lights glowed directly through the tent fabric. 3 distinct points forming the shape of a head inches from where I was curled. It was right outside. I clamped a hand over my mouth, forcing myself not to cry out. My breath shook uncontrollably. For a moment, everything stopped. Then, scrape. Something dragged its fingers across the side of the tent. Slowly, like it was feeling the shape of me through the fabric. Scrape. It circled the tent, dragging what sounded like long nails across the nylon. Every scrape crawled straight across my spine. Then the whispers returned. We want to see. I clenched my eyes shut. The tent glowed brighter. And then, the zipper began to move. The zipper inched upward on its own. I snapped. I kicked the front of the tent with everything I had, sending the half-open zipper and the glowing points of light tumbling backward. Before the creature could recover, I burst out of the tent, grabbed my backpack, and sprinted blind through the forest. Branches tore at my face. Roots tripped my feet. The cold air cut my lungs with every breath. Behind me, the lights followed. Fast, gliding effortlessly between the trees. Every time I looked back, they were closer, 3 cold blue eyes floating above the ground. The whispers grew stronger. Stay. See. Come back. I ran harder. I didn't know where the trail was. I didn't know which direction led to safety. All I knew was that if I stopped, even for a second, that thing would reach me. Eventually, I burst through a patch of thorn bushes and stumbled into a shallow ravine. I fell hard, face first. Air knocked from my lungs. The lights reached the top edge of the ravine, and then they did something impossible. They split apart, each light drifting away from the others, spreading across the trees like single floating stars. Dozens more lights flickered to life deeper in the forest. Then hundreds, a sea of glowing blue sparks awakening one by one, all watching me. That's when I understood. There wasn't one creature. There were many. Blackwater Pines wasn't a forest. It was a nest. The lights began drifting down into the ravine. Slow, steady, surrounding me like a tightening circle. I stumbled backward, slipping on loose dirt, clawing for anything to grip. My hand brushed something metal. A boundary marker. A rusted forest signpost half buried in moss. The moment my fingers wrapped around it, the lights froze. All of them. Then, slowly, they dimmed, shrinking, pulling back like they were being dragged away by some invisible force. Within seconds, every light blinked out. The forest returned to black silence. I didn't question it. I climbed the ravine wall, ran until my legs gave out, and didn't stop until I reached my truck at dawn. As I was driving away, exhausted, shaking, half-conscious, I made the mistake of glancing in the rearview mirror. At the edge of the trees, just beyond the headlights, 3 faint blue lights hovered in a perfect triangle. They didn't follow. They just watched, as if reminding me, we know you saw us. We know you heard us. We are still here. And I realized something. Those lights weren't trying to attack me. They were trying to lure me deeper, to take me somewhere I wouldn't return from. I don't camp alone anymore. I don't hike far from towns. And I will never set foot in Blackwater Pines again. But sometimes, late at night, when everything is quiet. I still see faint blue light flicker outside my window. I've spent most of my life outdoors. Camping, hiking, nights under the sky. It's always been my escape. Nothing ever scared me out there. Not bears, not storms, not even those nights where the darkness feels so heavy you swear something is sitting on your chest. But the night I heard the footsteps in the woods, the night I realized they weren't human, that was the night the forest stopped being a place I loved. I haven't camped since. This is the story that made sure I never will again. It was early September when I decided to hike the Alder Ridge Loop, a 14-mile backcountry trail hardly anyone uses. The kind of trail where you don't see another soul for days. Exactly the way I liked it. The weather was good, the air was cool, and the forest, well, it looked normal. But there was something about Alder Ridge, something my brain kept nudging at me to notice. The trees were too still. The wind didn't seem to carry sound. Everything felt one notch too quiet. But the trail was beautiful. Tall pines, moss everywhere, streams cutting between boulders that looked like they hadn't moved in centuries. Around sunset, I reached a flat clearing with a perfect fire ring and soft ground. I snapped a few photos, set up my tent, collected firewood, and lit a small fire. That's when I noticed it. No crickets, no owls, no rustling leaves, no sound at all. Silence like that has weight. It presses against you. And the longer I sat there, the heavier that weight felt. I should have packed up and left. But I didn't. I wish to God I had. It was around 9:30 p.m. when I heard the first one. A crack, like someone stepping on a branch. I froze. The sound came from the left side of the clearing, maybe 20 feet into the trees. I listened hard, squinting into the darkness. My fire crackled softly, but beyond that, nothing. Then crunch. Another footstep. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Probably a deer, I whispered, but the words rang hollow even in my own head. A deer doesn't step like that. Not so slow. Not in perfect intervals. Crunch. 5 seconds. Crunch. It was pacing. I stood up, holding my flashlight, shining it toward the sound. The beam stretched between the trees, illuminating nothing but rough bark and darkness. The footsteps stopped. Silence swallowed the clearing. Okay, I muttered, trying to laugh it off. Just an animal. Relax. But my gut felt twisted. My instincts were screaming in a way I'd never felt on any trip. Still, I forced myself to sit back at the fire. Staring into the flames helped. A little, until the footsteps returned on the other side of me. Crunch, crunch, crunch. Slow, steady steps now coming from behind my tent. My mouth went dry. The footsteps were circling me. I shone my light again. Nothing. But the footsteps didn't stop. Around and around they went, one slow step at a time, always just beyond the reach of my flashlight beam. Not rushing, not stalking, just walking, studying, testing my reactions. I called out, "Hello? Who's out there?" Silence. Then, crunch. One loud, heavy step, closer than before. My skin crawled. This wasn't an animal, and it wasn't afraid of me. Around 10 p.m., the footsteps stopped. The silence slammed back into place. But the dread didn't leave. I sat with my back to the fire, turning slowly, flashlight scanning the trees. My heart hammered so loudly it felt like the thing in the woods could hear it. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I don't know. Then I heard something far worse than footsteps. Breathing. Not human breathing. Not animal breathing. This was wrong. Wet. Uneven. Like someone trying to imitate a breath without understanding how lungs worked. Ha. My skin pricked all over. It came from the darkness just beyond the firelight. I raised my flashlight. My hand shook violently. The beam jittered across the trees until it hit something. Not a body. Not a face. Something pale. Barely visible behind a trunk. I blinked, leaned forward, squinting. It wasn't a face. It was a hand. Long-fingered. Too long. Wrapped around the trunk like a spider's leg. The breathing grew louder. H-H-H. H-H-H. I stumbled backward, nearly falling into the fire. The hand slowly slid behind the tree, disappearing. The breathing stopped. Silence again. My thoughts spiraled. Pack up. Leave. Run. Now. Now. But my legs wouldn't move. Fear pinned me in place like a weight on my chest. At midnight, the fire began to die. The darkness thickened. I was shaking uncontrollably, hugging my knees, flashlight pointed at the tree lean. I kept whispering to myself, "It's just an animal. It's just an animal. Animals don't breathe like that. Animals don't circle tents." The trees swayed slightly in a breeze I couldn't feel. Then I heard again crunch. One step, then another, emerging from the trees. Slow, steady, closer. A shape moved at the edge of the darkness. I held my breath. The fire flickered. The shape froze. Then, with a sickening smoothness, it stepped into the firelight. And I saw it clearly for the first time. I wish I never had. It was tall, much taller than any person, its limbs impossibly thin and bent at strange angles, like it had too many joints. Its skin was stretched tight and pale, almost translucent. Its head, its head, it was wrong, elongated, tilted. Its face was smooth except for a wide, lipless mouth stretched in a silent, unnatural smile. It had no eyes, but I knew it was looking at me. It leaned forward slightly, as if inhaling me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My flashlight flickered in my shaking hand. The thing reacted instantly. Its head snapped toward the light in a single, violent jerk, like a predator locking onto prey. And then, it started walking toward me. Something in my mind finally broke. The paralysis shattered. I grabbed my backpack and sprinted into the trees. No direction, just away. Behind me. Thud, thud, thud. Heavier footsteps than anything human. It was chasing me. Branches tore my skin. Roots caught my boots. My lungs screamed for air. I didn't look back. Not once. Then I heard it, that breathing. Right behind me. H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H-H. I choked on a scream and pushed harder. I don't know how long I ran. Minutes? An hour? Time didn't exist. At some point, I burst onto a slope. My foot hit loose gravel. I tumbled, rolling down a steep hill, slamming into rocks and brush until I hit flat ground hard enough to see stars. Pain shot through my body. I moaned, grabbing my ribs. Then I heard again, the footsteps at the top of the hill. Thud, thud, stopping right above me. I held my breath. Didn't move. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, the thing emitted the loudest, deepest inhale yet. Ha-ha-wa-wa. It echoed through the trees. Then, silence. I waited and waited. No footsteps, no breathing, no movement. An hour later, maybe two, I crawled until I found a stream, followed it downhill, and eventually reached a logging road by dawn. A trucker found me stumbling along it, bruised, shaking, filthy, out of breath. He asked if I needed a hospital. I said no. I didn't want anyone thinking I was insane. But I should have gone. I should have told someone. Because the story didn't end there. 2 days later, after I'd returned home, cleaned up, slept for nearly 12 hours, I went outside to get something from my garage. And froze. Something was sitting on my driveway. A stick. A long one. Balanced upright. Perfectly. Unnaturally. As if someone had placed it there, or something had stood it there. Around it, pressed faintly into the dirt, were footprints. Not boots. Not animal prints. Long, thin. Bare. Toe-less. Almost skeletal. I backed away slowly, heart pounding. Then I noticed something else. A scrap of fabric caught on the stick. I picked it up with shaking fingers. It was a piece of my tent. Ripped. Dirty. Recognizably mine. The creature had followed me. Not physically, maybe, but it knew where I lived. It wanted me to know that it knew. I moved a month later. I still don't camp. I still wake up some nights thinking I hear slow, deliberate footsteps circling my house. Sometimes I look out the window and swear I see something tall standing just beyond the porch light. Just watching. Just breathing. Waiting. I don't tell people this story anymore. Not because I'm scared they won't believe me, but because I'm scared they will. I used to think the woods were peaceful, beautiful, alive in a comforting way. But Bear Creek Gorge cured me of that. There are things in the wilderness older than stories, older than fear itself. And some nights, when the wind dies and the earth goes still, those things come crawling out to remind us who came first. This is what happened the night I learned that truth. My cousin Eric and I planned the trip for weeks. 3 days camping near Bear Creek Gorge. Fishing, hiking, drinking cheap beer, the usual. We'd both been stressed with work and needed the escape. Bear Creek Gorge wasn't far, but it was isolated. A deep split in the mountains, thick with old-growth forest. Not tourist-friendly. Hardly anyone went down there because the trail was rough and poorly maintained. Perfect for us. The hike-in was uneventful. The weather cool. The creek low and quiet. Nothing strange. Nothing eerie. Until we picked our campsite. There was a flat patch of dirt near the gorge edge. A massive fallen tree provided shade, and a natural stone bench sat beside a bend in the creek. The spot looked too perfect, like someone had carved it out intentionally. Eric joked, "Man, it's like nature built this spot just for us." I wish he hadn't said that. We set up, unpacked, lit a small fire, and cracked open beers as the sky faded to dusk. Everything felt peaceful. Too peaceful. Even the creek sounded muted, like the whole forest was suppressing its own voice. And then night fell. Around 10 p.m., the forest went dead silent. I know, forests get quiet at night, but this wasn't normal. This wasn't the gentle hush that comes with darkness. This was stillness. Complete. Artificial. Wrong. No crickets. No frogs. No leaves rustling. Just nothing. Even the air felt heavy, like it had been thickened somehow. Eric noticed too. He poked at the fire, glancing at the tree lean with a frown. "You hear that?" he asked. "Hear what?" He looked at me, wide-eyed. "That's the thing. There's nothing to hear." I tried to play it off. Told him it was normal. Told him the forest was just settling for the night. But part of me knew forests don't just shut off. Not like that. Around midnight, we were still wide awake. Neither of us wanted to say aloud that we felt on edge, but we did. And then the stillness finally broke. A sound echoed from the gorge. A low, drawn-out moan. Not human. Not animal. Something slow. Soft. Almost questioning. "Ugh." Eric froze, beer halfway to his mouth. "What the hell was that?" he whispered. "I don't know," I said, even though I knew one thing for certain. I'd never heard anything like it in my life. It wasn't loud. It wasn't close. But it felt directed at us. The sound faded, swallowed by the gorge's depth. And then, silence again. Deep, suffocating silence. We sat still, barely breathing. Minutes passed. Then, from the forest behind us, snap, a branch breaking. Then another, and another. Slow, deliberate steps like someone walking barefoot over dry sticks. Eric reached for his flashlight, but didn't turn it on yet. "Probably a deer," I whispered. But we both knew that wasn't a deer. It didn't sound like one. The spacing of the footsteps was wrong. Too slow. Too careful. Like the thing was thinking about each step. He clicked on his flashlight. The beam hit the trees. Nothing. Just trunks and shadows. But the footsteps didn't stop. They moved, circling us. Slowly. Deliberately. Never coming into view. Eric stood up, flashlight shaking. "Hey," he shouted. "If someone's out there, say something." Silence. But the footsteps continued. A full circle. Around our campsite. Never speeding up. Never slowing down. Just pacing us in the dark. That's when Eric whispered, "It's not walking, it's crawling." My blood cold, I listened harder. He was right. The steps weren't even. They were irregular. Bodies using multiple limbs sound different than two-legged creatures. This thing had more than two. At 1:47 a.m., I remember the exact time because I checked my watch constantly. The footsteps stopped. Silence again. A terrible anticipation filled the air. Eric slowly turned the flashlight toward the gorge side. "Do you see that?" he whispered. I followed his beam. At the edge of the gorge, something pale moved. A hand, long, thin, bending wrong, gripping a tree trunk, and pulling a shape upward into the firelight's edge. I couldn't see its face. I couldn't see its full body, but I saw its fingers, bending like jointed branches, too flexible, too long. Eric whispered, "Holy." Before he could finish, the thing emitted a sound. A scream, but not vocal. It sounded like metal tearing, like stone grinding, like something that had never used a voice before and was trying to mimic one. Eric dropped the flashlight. It landed beam first into the dirt, illuminating the underside of our tent. We didn't even see the creature retreat. We only heard it. A scramble, fast, frantic, skittering back down the gorge wall. Then silence. Again. Always silence afterward. Any sane people would have packed and run. We didn't. Our brains couldn't register what we saw, couldn't accept it. We just sat there, backs pressed together, fire blazing, listening. Every part of me screamed to leave, but my legs felt frozen. Eric eventually said, "We stay by the fire. If it's light, it might stay away." But I wasn't so sure. Around 2:30 a.m., something else happened. Something worse. Something I still can't explain. A loud crack echoed from above us. Then another. Then a third. We realized, with growing horror, the sounds were coming from the trees above. Not around. Above. Eric shone the flashlight upward. At first, we saw nothing, just branches and leaves. Then something pale shifted in the canopy. My breath caught. "What is that?" Eric whispered. The pale shape moved, and suddenly a long limb swung into view, hooking around a branch like an arm. Then another limb. Then another. For in total, the creature was above us, crawling, upside down, following the tree line directly over our campsite. If it had fallen, it would have landed right on us. Eric dropped to his knees. I dragged him back to the fire, but he kept staring upward. The creature moved slowly, methodically, testing branches, shifting weight like it was studying us. Then, it stopped, above our tent, motionless, like it was waiting. Something about that stillness made my stomach twist violently. Creatures waiting are creatures hunting. Eric finally whispered, "On 3, we run." "Right? To the creek." I nodded, even though I didn't think we'd make it. He counted under his breath. 1, 2. A long, impossibly thin arm shot down from the darkness above and hit the ground between us, fingers splaying, digging into the dirt. Eric screamed. Something grabbed his jacket, ripping, pulling, dragging him toward the base of the tree. I lunged for him, gripping his arms, pulling with everything I had. Whatever held him was strong, stronger than both of us combined. But it didn't drag him up. It dragged him toward the gorge, toward the drop. "Help! Help! Oh God, help!" Eric screamed, clawing at the mud. I saw the creature's arm clearly now, pale, hairless, segmented like an insect's limb. And its fingers, they weren't fingers. They were hooks. I grabbed a burning branch from the fire and swung at the limb. The creature let out a sound, like steam exploding. It recoiled instantly. Eric pulled free, scrambling back to the fire. His face was sheet white, his eyes wide and unfocused. He whispered, "It wanted to take me down there." And I believed him. We grabbed our packs. Didn't pack anything else. Didn't care. We just ran. But the gorge wasn't done with us. As we fled, we heard clawing, scraping, crawling. From behind. From above. From below. The creature wasn't alone. Shapes moved on the gorge walls. Shapes that crawled like spiders. Shapes with too many limbs and pale, stretched bodies. At one point, Eric grabbed my arm so hard I felt nails dig in. "There," he whispered. I looked and saw one of them crawl up from the gorge floor. 100 feet in seconds. Its limbs bending, snapping, hooking into the rock as it ascended. No human could move like that. No animal could either. This was something else. Something evolutionary wrong. Something predatory. We didn't breathe again until we saw the faint reflection of my truck's silver through the trees. We dove inside. I didn't even shut my door before I turned the engine. I slammed the gas. The tires spat dirt. The truck skidded sideways before gaining traction. As we sped away, Eric shouted, "Look!" I did. I wish I hadn't. On the trail behind us, illuminated by the brake lights, were 3 shapes. Tall, bent, limbs dangling too low, heads tilting at impossible angles. Watching us leave. Not chasing. Just watching. As if to say, "We could have taken you. We can still take you. You were let go, not saved." Eric never camped again. He barely speaks. His nightmares never stopped. Sometimes he calls me at night, whispering, "They're on the roof again," before hanging up suddenly, like he regrets saying anything. As for me, I hear things outside my window sometimes. Scraping, dragging, breathing, the same sounds from a gorge. And I know, deep down, they didn't stay at Bear Creek. They followed us. They've been waiting, because whatever crawled out of the stillness at Bear Creek Gorge, it didn't crawl back.